This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovator's Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Welcome to Killer Innovations. I'm your host, Phil McKinney. This week we are actually in the mobile studio. We are still on the road. And in this case, this week's show, we're taking a little bit of a strange kind of connection, because while I'm on the road here in Florida, the guest is actually connecting to me in Florida from New Zealand. So I don't know how we get any further away than that. So William Chomley, Bill Chomley, is from New Zealand, has been doing some pretty interesting work in a variety of different areas. But before we get started, I wanted to give you an opportunity for you to kind of tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for having me on. Look, I started a company called Impatient, which specializes in artificial intelligence and in the area of computer vision. We've been going for about 3 years. Well, me personally, anyway, for about 3 years.
How did you get into this? Right? What was the precursor before 3 years ago?
Well, look, I'm quite an impatient shopper. I used to work in finance, and every single lunch break, I'd spend the majority of my lunch break in line trying to, check out. And so I started thinking, how do I remove the checkout? Purely for selfish reasons. And so during, my tenure at the fund that I was working at, I started looking at a technology called RFID. And, the time that I was looking at it, there were some pretty exciting advancements, and I started to think, well, look, if we put a tag on every single one of these supermarket products, we could remove the checkout. And so I started this business, and we had a couple of engineers, myself and one other girl working with me, and we got it to a stage where one of us had to go full time. Well, in fact, all of us had to go full time. And so we all decided we'd quit our jobs, and I walked in and resigned, and no one else did. So I was left on my own. And look, after a while, I realized that the business just wasn't going to take off, for a number of reasons. The technology wasn't quite there, the cost of implementation wasn't there. And so, the business failed pretty quickly after I started. So for me, I didn't have a job. However, I did have this vision of, creating a checkoutless supermarket ecosystem that, just wasn't there at the moment. So I started looking at, different technologies and came across computer vision in mid-2015. And started talking to everyone around the world, about whether or not I would be able to create, my business case using this type of technology. And towards the end of 2015, I got in touch with one of the head researchers at Google in San Francisco and asked him what he thought. If I put a couple of cameras on a trolley, would I be able to recognize items, in real time, based purely on, visual aspects? And he came back and he said yes. And so I asked him if he wanted to work with me, which he said no. But he did recommend that I worked with one of his contacts. And so from 2015 to 2016, I started Imager, and I had 3 jobs to fund it. So I was setting up a cafe from 4:30 in the morning, and then I was a furniture removalist during the day, and then I was doing financial models for people on the weekends or at night to earn a bit of cash and fund the business.
So it's the proverbial entrepreneur. You're treading water as hard as you can to keep everything afloat.
Exactly. exactly. I got to a stage where we needed to progress a lot quicker. And so this whole entire time I was trying to raise capital as well through, private equity, through venture capital, through friends and family. I managed to get a loan midway through 2016 that, really kind of helped us get to the next stage. But, for me, by the time we had raised capital in 2016, I would have pitched north of 150 people, I think, rejected every time. And towards the end of 2016, I was very fortunate to bring on some investors. And at that stage, I moved myself back to Auckland because I was living in Sydney, Australia. I moved myself back to Auckland and got the business underway.
Were the investors in Auckland, or where were the investors based?
So the investors are in Auckland.
Okay.
And we have one Chinese national as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But I was coming towards the end of, I guess, my tether when it came to pitching. But New Zealand was a logical step for me to move back to. We've got an amazing ecosystem here that really does support small business. The government pitches in as well to help fund as well, alongside any research and development. For example, Callaghan will give you 40% back on anything that you spend, right? Up to, I think, about 1.5 million.
Yeah, and for those of you who are listening, you can go back. I talk about my trip to Auckland, where I was invited by Callaghan, which is the name of the innovation office for the New Zealand government, named after Sir Callaghan, very famous physicist. But the support that the government gives in New Zealand is somewhat unique. But what I actually found even more interesting in my visit to New Zealand was how much all the companies actually support each other. The community there is incredibly strong.
Yeah, we've got an amazing ecosystem here. Everyone wants to see each other do quite well, which is really great. New Zealand's too small to have that predatory kind of nature. And we are quite a small nation, and 4 million people. Everyone's got to help each other as much as we can. And some amazing businesses have come out of New Zealand. You would have seen recently Rocket Labs, for example. Mm-hmm. They've just done their launch. Xero, the accounting software. Soul Machines, who's got quite possibly the most realistic looking avatar in the world. So for a small population, I'd say we pack a pretty impressive punch.
Well, you definitely punch way above your weight relative when you think about 4 million. But at least the way that I got it was described to me when I was visiting with Callaghan was look, we're a small nation, not close to anybody, so you have to be pretty self-reliant, and therefore we've been innovators forever. It's just part of our DNA, because it's not like you could 100 years ago just go buy something. You had to go invent it, because there was no place else to go get it at.
Yeah, well, we are very resourceful, I would say. I'd say the ecosystem that's being created here is with Callaghan is certainly one that helps foster this type of this type of tech advancement that we're seeing.
Yeah, I mean it is somewhat unique, from that perspective, but at the same time, it just having entrepreneurs is not enough, right? Look, you said you had to go talk to 100, 150 people to try raising capital. It's these pockets of access to risk capital, which in some cases can be the most restrictive.
Yeah. Look, I mean, if you have a look at any of the guys that have, or any people that have made it in New Zealand, they've all gone out on their own, right? Which is why they're so willing to support other people that are also, trying to do the same thing. So it does, it all kind of, it flows in roundabouts, which is great.
Yes, exactly. So we're going to take a quick commercial break, but one of the things that I'm going to bring up in the next segment is everybody's out there claiming AI and everything. So we're going to dig in a little bit here about, really the AI, what's going on in the AI space, but particularly around vision and given what Imager is going under. But I just came from CES, where I think everybody slapped AI onto every product or technology talked about in Las Vegas had to have AI in it. So I'm going to push a little bit on that. It's one of those hot button issues for me. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this quick commercial break and continue our conversation here in the studio. So be right back. Welcome back to Innovations. We're here with William, and we're talking specifically about your company, Imager. And in the last segment, I was kind of yanking your chain a little bit on, I just came from Las Vegas. Everybody's claiming AI. I mean, it's like we're back to the version of .com, where everybody had a .com, right? So
Yeah.
talk a little bit about your view of the AI, but more importantly, what's different about what you're doing versus what other players are doing in the same space?
Look, to start with, I think you're right. A lot of companies start claiming AI very early. Now, what we need to remember is that AI has been around for quite a long time.
Exactly.
I think in terms of companies that are doing real AI, what we're seeing is, this unsupervised form of machine learning. And supervised, right? I think some people start to blur the lines through using things like, predictive analytics, for example. Any kind of smart lookup in Excel, for example, can give you some form of AI. I think that the companies that are really in this AI space are the ones that are doing a lot of the logic around, as I said, this unsupervised, right? And so, for example, I take the conversational aspect of soul machines, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with soul machines, but, the ability for this digital avatar to actually communicate in close to real time and actually start to learn and behave like a real human being, for me, this is true artificial intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
I think, things like chatbots that look at keywords, for example, yes, they are a form of AI, but again, this is just a predictive kind of lookup and pattern matching, essentially.
Right.
So, for us, what differentiates us is we do what's called computer vision. Now, there are a number of different aspects of computer vision. First of all, you've got, the image processing aspect, which is what we do. But what differentiates us is we're able to do it in real time, and we're able to do it in real time over Wi-Fi, right? Over a Wi-Fi network. So, we've built everything in-house. And, we have developed all of our own software. We don't make use of libraries such as TensorFlow, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And, again, what has really kind of set us apart from everyone else is our level of accuracy. So, we're able to capture items in flight, with a very high level of confidence, which is absolutely amazing.
So let's go back. The problem you're trying to solve is the ability to recognize an item as the shopper's going through the process of shopping.
Correct.
Without the need for them to do any kind of special scanning or holding it a certain way. You're just recognizing it as they're going through the normal shopping experience.
So when we started Imager, we didn't want to change anyone's shopping behavior.
Right.
One of the, I guess, key barriers for uptake for a lot of, the past barcode scanning, rigs that have been attached to trolleys was that it involved, first of all, the customer to be honest, that they were scanning everything, but also it required a change in behavior. For us, because we're monitoring everything in real time as it enters or exits the trolley, and we don't require barcode scanning, there is no actual change to your shopping behavior whatsoever. So if you imagine a product as it goes in, what our system's doing is we're looking for shape, color, size, font, pictures, and we extract all of this information. We then have a look at, what the product database is for this retailer. We get the barcode, and then we feed through the price through to the customer's phone, and obviously deduct it from the store's inventory. So we need to be able to do this in real time. Otherwise, by the time someone's finished their shop, you've got all of this kind of backed up data, and people start walking out of the store without paying for things.
Yes, and so now I apologize for the listeners. I've still got this bad cough ever since Las Vegas. But in the case of being able to do that in where the shopper's not even aware that it's happening, right?
Yeah.
It's not like they're aware that the cameras are there, right? You
No.
know. So, how do you register the original image? So every time, a retailer changes the color on a package, or every time the retailer takes on a new item that they're going to stock on the shelf, how does it get into your system? How do you learn? What's the learning mechanism?
Yeah. Okay. So we have what's called an onboarding process. Now, we can do between 10 to 40,000 and anywhere in the range of 30 to 60 days. Now, for us at the moment, we have just signed a trial with, one of New Zealand's largest retailers. For us, we're taking a bottom-up approach, which means that we're at store level. We're taking pictures, of every product that are at the store. Going forward, what we are doing is working with something called GS1, which is a barcode, issuer. Now, they're already taking pictures of every product. So before an item's even on a shelf, they're already starting to take pictures of it. Now, if we add a few more angles, our system can start to learn.
Mm-hmm.
So for our entire system, we have pictures of every single angle of a product, which means that we can, essentially recognize a product regardless of orientation or speed as it enters the basket. So, there is quite a large process to start with. However, where we scale quite well is once you've done one supermarket, you can do them all.
Right.
Because product offering is quite homogenous, across retailers. There's only, for example, one, Waddy's Baked Beans, and both retailers will sell these. And, again, the same for you guys in the US.
Right, exactly. And so it is this a little bit of this, hockey stick effect, right? If you got to get that, you got to do that the initial learning, and learning has always been the thing in AI that's been identified of, the upfront data capture that allows you then to do what it is you have to do on an ongoing basis. We're going to take another quick commercial break. When we come back, I want to get more into what your experience was with your first set of customers, your trials and getting some, and you've got some that you just shared about with one of the largest retailers there in New Zealand, because I think it's an interesting shift, right? When we see things like Amazon and others going to these, checklist retailers and being able to check it out. So when we come back, we're going to continue on our conversation with William and on his company Imager and the use of AI in retail checkout. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. You're listening to Killer Innovations on the BizTalk Radio Network. Welcome back to Killer Innovations. I'm your host, Phil McKinney. Let's talk specifically about the product, Device Bits. So what's the status of the product today?
Sure. So the product is out in market, installed across various vertical applications.
Is that primarily in the U.S. or all over the world?
Primarily in the U.S., yeah.
Right.
So a little bit scattered throughout Latin America, but right now those are the two focuses. Yep.
And so any specific industries, wide industries?
Sure. So when we jumped right into telecommunications, given my background, and it was an easy place to get to some revenue. And so we have probably our biggest install base in telco made a baby step into consumer electronics. Obviously, telco has a lot of consumer electronics tied to it. And then in the last year, launched into financial services, travel and hospitality, utility, and obviously with Cable Labs and the UpRamp program, we've now engaged with a dozen or more cable operators around the world. So.
Okay. So what's the typical use case for the product in your clients today?
Yeah, I think our clients come at it from really two angles. The first is the customer experience team. Hey, how do we create a better self-service experience for our consumers? There's a lot of buzz around bots and things like that, but the reality is bots is just a delivery mechanism in our eyes, and we have a bot platform, so not to discount it, but it's a delivery mechanism for self-service.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we focus there for the customer experience, marketing, the sales teams that may come to us and have an interest in what we're doing. But where we're seeing probably the most traction in the last 6 months is the call center operations. And so that may be employees or maybe an outsourced call center partner where they have thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of agents answering the phone and trying to figure out, hey, why is this agent answering the same question 95% of the time?
Right.
How do we build automation, efficiency into this process? And so we take that sort of approach from a client perspective. We go after both of those angles, and then obviously have products to support both types of users.
And so, what kind of results have your clients seen with this kind of an with deploying these kinds of an application?
Sure. So, today we're deflecting around 2 million calls to the center per
Really?
month for our customers.
Is that total across all of your customers?
Yeah. So aggregated
2 million.
Yeah. So and we're probably scratching the 2.5 now, but I know coming into mid last year we're at 2 million a month, and that's a combination of delivery through self-service portals, mobile applications, virtual assistants. We're pushing all of this knowledge out through those different interfaces and bots.
Mm-hmm.
And so on the flip side of that, we've enabled 20,000 customer care agents at our largest client today. They've reduced call handle times. They've increased agent accuracy by 12% since putting it in place. And so they're seeing great benefit from that. In fact, as we just come out of the Christmas season, there was a lot of pressure on us that they didn't want to go through the massive holiday hiring they had to do typically. They wanted to drive efficiency in their existing footprint so that they could handle that new volume without bringing on 3,000 additional agents in just that rush. Right. And so, we've successfully made it through the holidays with them, and no interruption. And as far as we know, the service has been great.
And then, do you have a way of measuring and understanding what the reaction's been from the actual end customers, the people who are actually the ones you're deflecting? What's been their experience?
Yeah, so depending on the type of interface they come in through to self-serve, we're tracking sentiment and things like that. We're tracking resolution rates. We're also tracking things we aren't able to answer. That's more important, right? And so our goal is to fail at number one. So the first time we can't answer the question, we want the system to build back that knowledge that customer might need, so that when the second customer asks that question, we can resolve that. And so we see an 86% efficiency rating in self-service. So 86% of the customers that come there are able to actually successfully resolve. Our largest client is the highest NPS score telecommunications provider in North America.
Really? I was going to get to the NPS score, because everybody in the telco world are big users of NPS.
Yep. Yeah. So NPS, CES is obviously customer experience score. So these are things that are coming into play now, but NPS is still the standard. And so, for that particular client, everything we touch has some flavor of NPS measurement, impact, dependency for them. So
yeah, interesting. So you said an 87% accuracy rate?
86, yeah.
86% accuracy rate. Is there some categorization on where that's not accurate? Meaning it's such a weird question, a weird issue that
Yeah, when you talk about interacting with a machine, right? And so one of the things that pretty much anybody that's in this space will tell you is the problem with the machine interaction today is, as humans, we tend to dump all of our problem into one statement. So, it's not just a singular problem, it's 3 or 4 problems I'm having. And so the ability for the machine to really break that down can create some confusion. So that's one category that we look at very closely. How do we break a customer's request or question into segments that are singular, so that we can actually answer it. The other one is just that the knowledge isn't there.
Yeah.
And so that's part of the self-learning experience, right? You're never going to bat 1,000.
Right.
So the system's going to miss things, and the challenge is how do you backfill that as quickly as possible.
And there's also I would guess though that there's questions that one person's going to ask that there is no second person ever asking it.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So therefore, you get
Yep.
the weird one-offs that just, you and then you would say, okay, we missed on the accuracy on this one, so you capture the knowledge, but then nobody ever taps the knowledge again.
Right. And so what happens is we capture that knowledge machine-based first, so we're not investing human capital. But as we start to see an escalation in that same or similar request, then we can actually invest resource into building out additional collateral around that. So we can kind of give you the introductory answer with machine that doesn't cost anything in human capital, but then we can invest human capital as we track the usage.
So as you get more requests, it starts your own version of trending.
That's right.
If the trending starts to tick up, then you say, okay, this is a more serious issue.
Yep.
Let's commit some resources to build out this answer.
Yeah, we call it knowledge monitoring.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, because what you don't want is, and this is where I think part of my argument against just everybody, big data is an answer, or machine learning is the answer, or AI is the answer. Is where do you tick off on what you do in the machine versus when do you bring the human element into place, and not bringing it in too early, because then you're just thrashing the human resource problem.
Yeah, exactly. And we focused a lot and actually have some IP created around that handoff, right? And so a customer tries to self-serve through web, through social media, through text message, whatever it might be. Ultimately, they may go to a bot as their next step, or they may go to a human agent. But what's important is whoever picks it up, whether it's a bot or a human, the last thing we all want to do is start over, and we've all done it.
Oh,
hey,
man.
Go back and check the lights on that equipment and make sure the lights are on, right? And so we're trying to reduce that customer frustration, because we know they're coming into this center at a marginal experience at best at this point. So how do we not?
You're already in the hole.
Right. We don't want to take any further steps backwards. And so the other thing we're doing on the agent side is we're informing the agent what the customer's already tried and if they said it was successful or not. And so we call those trajectories. So what is that customer trajectory? Are they likely to return the equipment? Are they likely to churn? Are they likely to increase their spend with you? And
so you're looking at, okay, if everybody that had kind of a similar step, what did they do?
That's
and
right.
so therefore you can better predict what's going to happen with this person if you don't do something.
Right.
different.
And you build SOPs, operating procedures for your agents to say, hey, if you see this customer is on a trajectory to churn, we need to take a different course of action.
Right.
And if they're not. So
it's actually also then really not just self-help, but it's also that guiding tool for the agent.
That's right.
For the live agent to say, okay, this person's been interacting with the machine. It's come to me. Now I've got that ability to see the experience they've had through this interaction and actually short circuit, a bad outcome.
That's right.
Whether it's a churn or...
Right. Yeah, the last thing that frustrated customer wants to do is spend another 20 minutes trying to solve their problem. So.
Exactly.
Yep.
Interesting. So we're going to take another quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going into the segment that we have on our show where we ask our guests to kind of go back and look through their entire history of being an innovator, entrepreneur, and now you've got all that history behind you. If you could go back to the beginning and give yourself a piece of advice, what would that advice be?
Okay.
So I'm going to give you the commercial break here. You get a chance to think about it. When we come back, Casey's going to share with us then his piece of advice over his experience of, if you could go back and talk to, the 25-year-old version of yourself,
Sure.
and give yourself that one piece of advice, what would that be? So stay right there. We'll be right back after this quick commercial break. You're listening to Killer Innovations on the Biz Talk Radio Network. Welcome back to Killer Innovations. This is the part of the show where we ask our guests to share kind of if you had perfect hindsight experience and given everything that you've learned being an innovator, a researcher at a major research center like Bell Labs, your startup experience, your experience with Device Bits, and you could go back and give yourself an advice as, as a 20-year-old or a 25-year-old, what advice would you give yourself?
Sure. Yeah, the list is long, but I think, well, one, putting yourself in the place where these types of opportunities happen. When it wasn't by luck that I ended up in Silicon Valley, so I think that was a big part, just personally, for my own personal development, and the big lesson learned. But what I picked up after I got to the Valley and have learned, and even at Device Bits have made some missteps, is the team is critical, right? And so you alluded to it earlier, Phil. You can't put a group of like-minded individuals all in a room and really expect to innovate. And so you've got to have characteristics and skill sets that are complementary, but also sometimes conflicting. And that's what in our organization drives a lot of our innovation. There's a lot of passionate conversations that happen in our meeting rooms, and so I would say that's my biggest lesson learned, even as of 3 years ago when I started Device Bits. I probably think about the team a little differently, knowing the direction we've come over the last 36 months.
Yeah, the team is interesting. Even my own experience from the startup that I did my IPO on, we were on an unbelievable tear. Growth-wise, I had to hire 8 people a day, 7 days a week for 18 months to meet the growth curve. Right? It's just so basically, could you fog a mirror, and did you have a heart rate?
Right.
Type of a thing, with no emphasis, no appreciation for culture. Then I got to HP, and culture was everything.
Yeah.
Bill and Dave established. So in your case, when you talk about teams, just the individual or the culture for Device Bits?
It's absolutely the culture. And so, again, in hindsight, in my opinion, I worked at one of the best cultures that's ever existed in software, and that's Rational. So, the development of that organization and honestly, the hand-picking, it felt like they did of everybody at Rational and how everybody, worked together as a unified entity. In hindsight, I realized that didn't just happen by chance. That was very much deliberate.
Yeah.
And so, as I've matured in my own career, I've come to realize that. And as I said, even in the last 3 years, I think I've become more wise to it, being in the role that I'm in now as CEO and seeing the hires we're making. And as I said, I think we've done a good job. We'll always strive to improve that as our market changes.
Well, it is interesting, right? Because I was a CEO for some really smaller entities or whatever, but when I took over at Cable Labs, and I came out of a phenomenal culture at Hewlett Packard, right? Just unbelievable. Bill Hewlett, David Packard, we're very deliberate, great culture. But I came into the organization with a great culture, right? And then when you go and you're the CEO in an organization and it's your responsibility to build the culture.
That's right.
I don't know about you, but there was a lot of stumbling.
Yeah.
Okay? When you come into an organization with a great culture and you just get to, immerse yourself in it is one experience.
Yep.
When it's your job to go define the culture, police the culture, structure the culture, that's hard.
It's very hard. And, there's a balance too, right, of your own personal characteristics, right, that you have to take into consideration. And just reflecting back and, Mike Devlin and Paul Levy that built Rational, and then the many around them, John Lovett and Walker Royce and Grady Booch, and the pioneers of software development process. And knowing those guys and meeting those guys, you realize, hey, they may come across as brash, but they're credible. And so that's what we focus a lot on with our own organization. Know your swim lane really, really well. And no matter how brash you may appear, everybody respects the knowledge that you have and what you bring to the organization. And that's proven very well for us.
Yeah, actually, that is interesting, right? It's, what I've found in organizations is where titles really don't matter.
That's right.
You earn your credibility.
Yep.
And you earn your credibility by your knowledge, expertise, your willingness to share, your willing to collaborate. People want to work with you versus people see you in the hallway and turn around and go the opposite way because they don't want to have a conversation with you.
That's right.
Type of a thing.
So Brian, our CTO, will tell you I'm probably the best tester we have inside of our organization. And I laugh. I say, well, maybe I just buy too much junk off the internet because I'm the ultimate consumer. So I test our product like I'm a consumer. So, but it is the joke that the second I touch everything, I tend to find how to break it.
Yeah.
And so we laugh about that a lot. But yeah, title means nothing. everybody has a responsibility to
Right.
contribute to our organization.
I think the whole move to flat organizations is really getting out of titles and
Yep.
et cetera. I think is fundamental. So hey, Device Bits, congratulations! You guys have just really been crushing it.
Thank you.
Your engagement on the UpRamp Federator program at Cable Labs has been phenomenal. The feedback from the industry has been great on your products. So congratulations on that.
Good.
If people want to get in contact with you, track what you're up to, follow what you're doing, what's the best way for them to follow you?
Sure. So we're pretty active on our website at devicebits.com. You can get white papers, the latest news, press releases, customer success stories are all out there. You can even sign up for a quick trial if you want to check out what we're doing. And then, on pretty much any social media outlet, we're at DeviceBits as well. So
Okay,
you can find
and
us
we'll put all those links up on the show notes. So
Great.
make it easy for everybody. Check it out. You've probably heard me be pretty negative on AI. This is one of those areas where it's real versus
That's right.
the AI toilet. It was highlighted at Showstoppers earlier this week. So with that, we're going to wrap up today's show. Appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to follow us and subscribe. If you're not a subscriber to the show, hop on over. You can do that over at iTunes, Google Play. We're now on Spotify and the iHeart app, SoundCloud, and pretty much any of the music audio sources that are out there. Follow us. If you've got a suggestion or a guest who you think would be great on the show, drop me a note, phil@killerinnovations.com. And with that, we're going to wrap this up. My advice to you is don't let the innovation antibodies get you down. Don't let the critics take away your excitement around the innovations you're working on. Get out there, take those innovations, turn them into real products, real technologies, real solutions, real offerings, and go out there and change the world. And we'll talk to you next week here on Killer Innovations. Bye-bye.